So now that I've covered how my roles link to the wider organisation, I'm going to discuss some more theories and analyse theories that incorporate psychology, human resources management, organisational behaviour and leadership within an organisation and within business. And then I'll use those roles that I've talked about to give real life examples. So to start off with some definitions and to understand what it is that these roles contribute. Organisational behaviour. Mullins describes organisational behaviour as it's how individuals and groups and structure contributes to behaviour within an organisation, and how that improves performance and ultimately reaches the shared goal of that organisation. Human resources management, the management of people, Torrington et al. Discusses how human resources management is a strategic approach to managing an organisation's workforce by way of appraisal, acquisition, compensation and training. The management of people is a really effective part in steering towards the goal. And then leadership. So leadership theories, they relate to my role massively. They influence team dynamics, and ultimately will determine how effective the workforce is. Now Carlyle talks about trait theory. So trait theory suggests that leaders are born with a certain characteristic and intrinsic value to lead. However, this approach can be limited. It doesn't allow for growth or experiential learning. It can be quite limiting to have a blanket approach to leadership. Whereas Hershey and Blanchard talk about situational leadership. Now, situational leadership is a more adaptive approach, and that adaptiveness is really effective when managing a large team. Within a team, there'll be different demographics, different roles and occupations, and these all have an impact on how that person needs to be managed. So, for example, a new team member may need a more directive approach, whereas an existing experienced team member will appreciate autonomy within their role. So that adaptiveness and learning over time from experience, especially in a fast-paced work environment. So to link it to my role within an environment like that, the interactions that we may have can be quite volatile. Every customer's different. The demands of a day may be vastly different from the last. So that adaptive style and to manage a workforce that can differ so much is really effective. Moving on to stress and well-being. So stress and well-being theories are linked to things like the job demand resources model, and this assesses how stress impacts a role and identifies the workloads and the stresses and the resources that have an impact on productivity and effectiveness. So within my role, for example, labour, I've talked about labour being managed across the department. It's a vital point of the operation, because if in a supermarket, for example, if there is not someone to serve a customer on a checkout, then that queue will not move. So identifying these stresses can really help leaders and managers understand where issues may arise, and how to combat them ultimately. This sort of links, and leadership also links to leadership, to learning and development. So learning and development theories, most notably Kolb's experiential learning I've mentioned previously. And this suggests that learning occurs through a cycle of experience, reflection, and application. And so this uses real-world experience to develop, and certainly in my role, watching how other colleagues interact with people, learning from these instances, and even in admin roles as well. As I progress through my role, I learn more about different subjects, and it allows me to have a deeper understanding of what is required, and so that reflection on what went well and what didn't go well can be really beneficial. Moving on to positive psychology. So psychology within business, it can be quite heavily linked to human resources management, as I said, the management of people. And so psychology theory looks into more emotional aspects of business, and motivation, for example. So Seligman's positive psychology theory, Seligman discusses the PERMA model, which is positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement. And this looks at the motivation and the emotional aspect behind the workforce. So from my experience, for example, recognition and value is really important to an employee's contribution. If they feel recognised, if they feel valued for their position, it fosters a much positive work environment, and therefore leads to high productivity, better morale, which also links to diversity inclusion. So that inclusion aspect, across any team, as I've said, demographics are going to be wide. Now in UK law, the Equality Act requires organisations to protect certain characteristics. So there are certain characteristics that are protected, things like race, religion, sexual orientation. All of these are protected by law, but the reality of that and the moral implications are much higher, and organisations should strive to reduce these barriers for the workforce. And to address workplace issues, using these theories, as I've said, experiential learning what goes well and what doesn't, and also stress and well-being theories as well. So using the job demand resources model to reduce workplace conflict. I think in my role, communication is a really important tool to reduce these stresses. So within organisations, the structure, which comes under human resources management, is very important. There are two primary structures within an organisation. That may be tall or flat hierarchical structures. Now, tall structures come with issues because lines of communication may take longer between lower level colleagues and upper management, for example. But in my organisation, the structure is quite flat, so that open line of communication is really effective when addressing issues and reporting. To dive into a challenge specifically and to hopefully identify maybe the solution or the cause. So I've talked about stress a lot within the workplace. And I think the job demand resources model is really good. But to sort of compare the two roles that I have, they give me a good wide experience, and so the difference is quite stark. An admin role that exists hybrid compared to an in-person role. There has been research, Arata et al. Found that hybrid working versus in office or in-person working had a big impact on productivity. Now, there are a lot of factors that may contribute to this, as I've mentioned previously, the occupation of an employee, the gender, the environment itself may have an impact on this productivity. But this research found that office productivity was 9.1% higher than hybrid. Now, research like this may not include neurodivergency, so it may not take into account all levels of ability. It also doesn't take into account new staff or how long the staff have been with an organisation for. As I said previous, with the leadership theories, existing members of an organisation may respect more autonomy within their role compared to a new member of staff. So addressing challenges like this are really important. It allows managers to find pinch points or areas that could be improved upon using these theories. As I've talked as well about recognition and feedback, this brings positive psychology back into to link and job satisfaction and motivation. I think communication is a really important tool, as I've mentioned, and that openness and the line of feedback that the workforce can have towards leaders is really important. So the experiential learning and allowing leaders to grow and learn from mistakes and learn from their own experience. To offer some recommendations for management, now this will be using my roles and the theories that I've talked about to develop some maybe hypothetical scenarios and some possible solutions. So I think employee wellbeing programs to reduce stress and burnout not only make employees feel valuable, but ultimately result in increased organisational performance. A line of communication, I think, is really important. In my opinion, that flat structure. We have listening meetings and listening groups where employees are able to raise issues directly to the highest level of management within the store. And finally, to have a really personal reflection and a future application of the learning that I've done throughout this assessment and the theories that I've touched on. I think it's really important to analyse how these theories either subconsciously at one time but moving forward more consciously impact and influence my role. I think it's been really useful to learn how leadership theories and evidence-based theories can affect real-world roles. Applying these theories gives me a much better understanding of my leadership style and how my role ultimately contributes to the wider organisation, and how my role fits within my team as well, and how as a team we contribute towards that organisational behaviour to reach that shared goal. I think in future roles, adopting a more reflective style and using really focusing on the reflectiveness of Kolb's experiential learning, I think would be really beneficial. Learning from experience, I've found is a fantastic way to grow and develop, but I think it's easy to forget about the reflection aspect and really appreciate how growth works and how growth allows you to progress within a role, and I think ultimately that contribution to a more positive and productive workplace is really important.